Hi, everyone, and welcome back to More Than a Muse. I'm Stauney.
I'm Sadie, and happy Independence Day week. Happy
Yes,
4th of
4th of
July.
July.
Yay.
The
We're
last time I
excited.
was proud of our country. I'm just
Well, yeah, on the original 4th of July, is that what your stance is?
Yeah,
You know what, that's fair.
I'm not feeling very patriotic this year. And if you
Not
want to feel
this year.
probably we have merch.
Yeah, we do. This is a really clean beginning that we've got going on here.
Yeah.
We do have adorable merch, and if you're watching it on YouTube, you can see it. We are both wearing it. At this point, you obviously won't get it in time for the 4th of July, but you'll get it, and it still feels relevant.
Yeah.
We do also have a Votes for Women
I
hat.
have my little hat.
And I'm wondering, are we saying that we vote for women? This is a hat signifying that I votes for women, or is it just in general votes for women? What is this?
It's just, yeah. I wanted to do something like the old suffragettes used to wear.
Yeah.
You know, where they would have the sashes that would say votes for women. And it was just like inspiring people to vote for women to get the vote. Now it's kind of more of a general votes for women, as in, wow, wouldn't it be great if we had more women in office? So
I love it.
Yeah,
so
that's what that is. It's cute, though.
It is very cute. There is your July merch. I think Jordan and I are going on a hike this 4th of July, and I'm excited to wear my Votes for Women hat on.
Yeah. I freaking love the hat, you guys. Like,
it's very cute.
I'm sometimes iffy on like hats. This one fits really well.
Yay.
And it's really cute. I just can't wear it while podcasting, but it fits really good and it's really nice. And then the shirt's fun too.
I know, it's a nice oversized fit. Thick material.
We've got our little logo on the sleeve.
I know. I'm very excited about it.
Very cute. So it's just a fun little merch drop if you guys want to participate.
And today we have a very on-theme episode for the 4th of July. We're talking about Miss America, Miss USA, pageants. Haven't talked about that much yet, but I'm excited to dive into it. Before we dive in, though, is there anything we need to touch on?
Did you want to talk about your song?
Oh, I do want to talk about my song. Okay. Hello. So I released a song as my artist project. If you're only listening to the podcast and you don't know me in real life, then you don't know this. But my artist name is Dasie, but spelled Dasie. You just switch the S and the D from Sadie, and it works. Very pop girly. But anyways, I released a song this last Friday called Hysteria. Very much inspired on what we talk about a lot on this podcast, which is feminine rage and feminine anger and the history, especially just like women in mental health, period. It was a while ago at this point that we learned about where hysteria came from, which
I think we actually first covered it in like our fangirls episode, because that was like at the very beginning of the podcast. Yeah.
Totally. So it's definitely a term that I didn't know about, though, until we started doing the podcast and like learning more about women's history. But yeah, hysteria is a totally made up thing based on the fact that like the Greek word for uterus was hystera. And so whenever a woman was acting crazy, they essentially created a diagnosis that they thought came from the uterus or came from the womb. And it wasn't really founded on anything. And the way they would treat it was not great. And so when I learned more about hysteria, I just thought that'd be a really cool title for a song, as something to reclaim as women, as like being like a good thing, as like a joyful thing of like maybe leaning in and like having other people like consider you to be losing your mind or being crazy, owning your life, your own power. Maybe that is hysteria, but that's actually an ideal. That's a good thing.
No,
and that can be joyful.
Because it's like getting rid of the stereotype of being worried about being seen as hysterical or being like an over-emotional woman. It's no, feel your emotions, like feel your joy and your anger. We talk so much about feminine anger and feminine joy as well. I know has been a huge part of it for you, and just letting you embrace that part of you and your inner womanhood and just be hysterical.
Exactly. Yeah. I have had a history of being accused of like being too loud, too much, too emotional, too dramatic, a crazy girl. I'm not the only one. I think every woman out there has been accused of being all of those things, but it's like, what if that's a good thing? What if it's a good thing that I'm too emotional, too dramatic, too crazy? What if that's actually what makes me create my art and is actually something I'm really proud of? I'm calling it hysteria.
You guys. It's such a good song. It's so empowering.
Thank you.
I feel like it's a good summer song. You could just roll down the windows and be like, I'm letting go of all of it.
Yeah. I've had some people message me of just being like, I listened to this like driving home last night. Or even I had a friend that was like, I listened to it on my phone. And I was like, wow, good song. And then he was like, and then I listened to it driving home from work. And I was like, oh, I love it. I get it now. And I was like, yeah, it needs that context. It's very nice in those situations.
So good. Yeah. Stream.
Thank you.
Check it out.
Yes. Had to do a little self-promo. But
of course.
Go be hysterical. And you know what? I'll put in, because I own the rights to the music, I decide where it goes. Maybe I'll have that be the outro music.
I'm on board with that.
You don't even have to go look for it in Spotify. You can just wait till the end to hear the chorus of it.
It makes me think of people are like hot girl summer or whatever. It could be like hysterical girl summer.
Hysterical girl summer. Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm like repeating the mantra to myself of creating content is fun. Creating promotion is fun. And I actually am having fun with it of just like trying everything. Like, but I don't know. It represents a lot of, like I said, it's a joyful song to me. Like someone said, oh, going on my feminine rage playlist. And yes, it belongs there, but it is a happy, joyful song. And
happy part of anger. I feel like it's like the gleeful part of anger when you're like, huh?
Yeah.
Like I'm not sad angry about it. I'm happy angry about it.
Like I'm going to burn the house down with a smile on my face. Actually, I do want to make a video of me like burning something or cutting something up, but like being very serene and like joyful doing so. But I also am terrified of holding something on fire in my hand. Anyways, so yeah, go stream Daisy and catch all the hysteria references in there.
Yes. I was about to say, though, I was thinking of the meme with the girl with the house burning down behind her and she's like smiling. You could totally reference
I just need to go burn a house down.
Yep. It's a tax write-off.
Look at the... Oh, there we go. I don't own a home to burn down, but I see where we're going with that. Anyways,
cool.
Let's dive into the topic at hand. Yes.
Okay. First off, I feel like I want to talk about the fact that there is a Hulu documentary right now, which we will be referencing a lot later, called The Secrets of Miss America. Ever since starting this podcast, I feel like I am such a documentary person. Like, do you notice practically every single documentary that I find? Because I'm like, ooh, learning.
And ooh, podcast episode. Yeah.
And so when I saw it pop up, of course, it went into my recommended for you section. And I was like, sure, why not? Like, it's only 4 episodes. And I was horrified.
Truly.
Yeah. And so each episode, an hour long, I think?
Like 45 minutes, honestly. It's pretty quick.
Okay. So yeah, so it's like less than 4 hours of your time. And even though we're going to talk about a lot of this, would highly recommend you going and watching it because they have a lot of like firsthand accounts and like a lot more footage and other stuff with it too.
Yeah, and a lot of the actual previous Miss Americas talking about their own experience and
like
giving
quite
their
a
opinions.
few of them. Yeah.
And a lot of varying opinions too, which I find very interesting. Is just they don't all agree on what should be done or like how Miss America as an organization is approaching things. I find that very interesting.
No, they really don't. And I didn't really know anything about Miss America before I watched it. Had you ever even watched the pageant? Because I never had.
Not really. The only pageant I've ever watched was there was a Miss Syracuse pageant, of course, where we're from.
I went to that one because my cousin was in it.
Yeah. That we would have like girls in the neighborhood that would participate in things. And so I would go to that every now and then. I think I sang the national anthem randomly as a child at Miss Syracuse once.
Very nice.
I don't remember. Anyways.
No, my cousin did one. She did Miss West Point, I think, for...
Nice.
You get scholarships. Like,
it is
money.
A legitimate... That's the sell of the organization is if you do well, you do get scholarships. And that can be a great way to pay for your education.
It really can. So it does draw in a lot of people from that. And what's funny is that Syracuse Miss West Point pageant, that all does eventually funnel to Miss America. That's how is each like local... What do you even call it? Pageant. I almost said election.
No. They not will a democracy. All funnel, it's not a democracy, but they'll funnel to their states elections.
And then the states funnel to, I think they do like another round or something and then, or no, each state brings one representative. So it would be state and then
50 women.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who was a like Miss Music City and competed in the Miss Tennessee.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she did very well in it, but shout out to Cassandra.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it's crazy. And I feel like I've seen a few headlines recently, like more so about it. Wasn't there The Miss USA pageant just had a huge scandal where the winner stepped down. And then
I didn't
there was
see that.
Yeah, there was like some stuff going on behind the scenes. And then, I also heard about it because Ballerina Farms.
Yeah.
She just competed in the Mrs. America pageant, which is for married women.
I did not know there was a Mrs. America pageant. Amazing.
Yeah. Which works the same way, except I think they skipped the county portions. I think it goes to state. And then, very interesting how it's been popping up everywhere. But you're probably wondering, what the heck is the difference between Miss USA and Miss America? Which isn't a crazy question, because I feel like, like,
what's the difference? You think they're not the same thing. Yeah.
Basically what happened, I found this really good article in the New Yorker, actually. It's called Miss America History Makers and Rule Breakers. It's by Lauren Collin. And she talks about the fact at the very beginning that people get them mixed up all the time. And it's valid because Miss USA actually came out of Miss America. So how it happened is in 1950, one of the contestants for the Miss America pageant named Yolanda Bezzi. Is that how you would say that?
I think so.
And she was a contralto
coloratura.
Oh, cool. Okay, whatever that means. Soprano from Alabama. And so she entered the Miss America contest. She performed an aria from Rigoletto as her talent. And then when she returned to her dressing room, she found the words "Harry sits here" scribbled on the mirror in lipstick because she had thick eyebrows, which,
that's horrible.
mind you, is the beauty standard now.
True.
Mean. And then she ended up winning, though, even though everyone was like, mean. She ended up winning. And then what happened is, at the time, the Miss America pageant was sponsored by Catalina swimsuits. And so the winner would usually sign a contract, and then they would have to tour the country as a model, basically, in the swimsuits, being like, I'm Miss America, and I endorse these swimsuits. She refused, saying, I'm an opera singer, not a pinup. And because she refused, Catalina was like, fine, we'll start our own pageant where people are forced to sign the contract.
Well, they have to.
And so they did. So they started Miss USA, and they ended up scrapping the talent competition. And then instead of cash prizes, instead of scholarships, they hand out just cash. And now both of them have existed alongside each other for centuries.
Yeah, since 1950. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been this whole thing, and the documentary did cover how in 2018, Miss America finally did away with the swimsuit competition. Because I feel like if Miss USA got rid of the talent competition, then shouldn't Miss America have just gotten rid of the swimsuit competition at that point too? But I guess that was too progressive for the 1950s, because people even had a fit about it in 2018. I don't know. But she said the whole thing with pageants that you have to realize is that there's a lot of levels of patriarchy and corruption and sexism and racism all within them, just from the foundation of what they were when they started. So regardless of like how much good they've done, how many people they've sent to school, confidence it's brought to people, there's a lot of things embedded in them. A little bit of that. Miss USA for a really long time, and Miss Universe, which is like the worldwide version of Miss USA, were owned by Donald Trump for a really long time. And so it just shows like people would use it as this like meeting place for business. Like he used it to meet with executives from other countries too. Miss Universe, instead of let's go to a steakhouse, it was like, let's go to a pageant.
Yeah.
And so she ended it by saying pageants commingling ideology and entertainment offers something extra. The French braided focuses of forces of patriarchy, capitalism, and racism. As Margot Mifflin demonstrates in Looking for Miss America, a pageant's 100-year quest to define womanhood, which I think is a book, they have been woven into pageant culture from the very start. And that's what I think the documentary ends up talking about too, is the fact that it's not really a great organization, which you look at it. And I mean that in the most kind terms, or like you could say that about a lot of things. But the documentary covered a lot and ended up saying is maybe it's time for Miss America to retire. Maybe.
Yes. Yeah. I did find it a very interesting documentary because it really did talk about the fact that like in the beginning of the pageant, they would literally, all the women would have like their legs measured, like their heads would be measured. It was actually intended to be like, okay, so who then is the most beautiful woman? Almost objectively, they were trying to find the most objective, beautiful woman. And so then it started out as a swimsuit competition. It was sponsored by a swimsuit company. So that makes sense as to where it came from. And we'll dive into each episode a little bit more, but like tying that to it took a long time for them to get rid of the swimsuit portion of the competition. It started out as a swimsuit competition in a way. And the point was to find a woman that was beautiful. And then it turned into, okay, then like, how do we find the most beautiful, rounded, like cares about her community, accomplished, talented. And it reminds me of like Pride and Prejudice, right? Where, what is her name? Catherine? She's like asking Jane of, oh, you play the piano or your governess taught you. She's like, no, I didn't. The point being is that to be an accomplished woman was to like have all of these talents and skills, was to like be beautiful, be knowledgeable, not to do anything with them necessarily, but still be able to have them and be able to present yourself as this beautiful, well-rounded woman. And that was like the quest of Miss America, was to find that. This woman is the pinnacle of what we want our women to represent, or what is an ideal woman. And of course, that can be very problematic when there are people behind that and deciding then, not objectively. Obviously, there's no way that competition can be objective.
You can't be objective in that. Like,
who's the most beautiful woman? I don't know.
It's like that comes down to so many things, and I feel like that's why they add like the questions and the talent and everything to fair. But at the end of the day, I don't know, is that something that we really need? And I think it was interesting that they posed that point. They also mentioned a lot that participation's been declining for decades. It used to, I thought this was super interesting. At its peak in the 1960s and 70s, Miss America attracted more than 2/3 of the country's television users.
Yeah.
That means 2/3 of the country sat down and watched the Miss America pageant every single year. And most of the attention that Miss America has left is probably because it has that nostalgia-based influence, Major League Baseball. Something that feels so, I don't know, like traditional American Pie American, you know, like early 1950s United States. Yeah, where it's just, this is the early days of our country, and there's like nostalgia associated with that in a way that people aren't quite ready to let go of.
Yeah. And like, it is a title. Another thing I love that it pointed out, it's like, it's not a state sponsored thing at all, which I also, for some reason, like growing up, I almost thought like it was, but like, no, like they just call themselves Miss America. It's not like the American government is like putting their stamp on this woman.
But it's a weird, because it works the same way that a local election works. You elect your mayor, and then you elect your governor, and then it's literally the exact same thing.
And who is Miss America?
Yeah.
Also, too, they meet with the president, and apparently, too, they will address legislative committees and things like that.
They have political influence.
Yeah. And granted, I think that is a really good thing about the organization, is that each person is supposed to be very involved in their community, and is also supposed to be pick an organization that they champion, and, you know, what's a cause that they champion. And I would say, watching my friend be involved in the city pageants, it definitely opened up my eyes to, I guess, what should be the true point. And I guess if you're doing it correctly, because she would always go out of her way to be very involved in like the local things happening here in Nashville, or like she would post on her page wearing her sash with her title. I should have asked her if she wanted to come on this episode. Actually, she could have probably provided a lot of insight. Maybe we'll do a follow-up and I'll ask her
maybe
about
we
it.
should.
Or I'll just see if she has any opinions that I can maybe follow up on our Instagram story about it. Anyways, but it was really cool to see how she did get involved with local charities, local businesses and things like that, and then would post about them as her title holder. So that, I think, can be really cool if the point is, hey, I want to represent the city that I live in. I care about the city that I live in. How can I serve them? And also get scholarship money so that I can potentially pay off my student loans, or I can do all of these things, which is an amazing thing to potentially offer to somebody who is beautiful, I guess.
Like, even the documentary, I don't feel like they were ever really upset about the local one, other than racism really bad. That is an issue that I feel like you have to handle on a community level. But it's more that once you get up to the higher up, like Miss America, that any problems. Maybe it's just because there's not a way to be involved in an entire country as a single person.
Yeah, that's
when
true.
You're a spokesperson for an organization that's a little bit more focused on funding and views than doing good in the community. Whereas I feel like maybe on a lower level, those county and state positions can be more obtainable and more helpful.
That's true. Yeah, I really like that. Because, yeah, it's true. Like, she would go into schools and talk to kids about mental health and then perform opera for them. Like, it was definitely something that she was, like, you know, trying to help people with. And I think that's the point of it. But then also at the Miss America level, when it's like the sponsorships are like with corporations and businesses, it's like, all right, what's that really helping?
And just the things that were happening too. But anyway, before we get on to that, let's talk about the first Miss America. Yeah.
Sorry, we are going on rants, but it's all so interesting.
I know. It's like literally over 100 years of history. So it's hard to talk about it in a perfectly condensed way because so many of the problems have been woven throughout. But anyway, the first Miss America pageant was held in September of 1921 in Atlantic City. And it was actually, I thought this was funny because I thought it would be the other way around, but it was inspired by the Ashbury Park's baby parade.
I love that. Yeah.
They were like, oh, you know that baby pageant we had? Let's do it for women.
Let's make girls do that. Yeah. You're right. Like, you would think that it's the other way around, that Miss America was first and then someone was like, that'd be funny if we did that for babies. No, the other way around.
But they basically invited people from New York, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and New Jersey. And it was a 2-day festival. And there's just like weird things. Like there was this guy named King Neptune who had like purple robes and a crown. He went around and did a meet and greet and hosted the whole thing. And apparently he only had one hand.
Whoa.
A weird start for what they claim to be.
Yeah.
So, very strange.
Why not?
What was also weird is that it's a very founded in racism, which I think is definitely like one of the biggest criticisms you can have against Miss America. Atlantic City was a segregated town that completely relied on Black labor. The African or Black Americans accounted for 22% of the population, but according to the historian Nelson Johnson, they made up 95% of the workforce in the area's white hotels.
Whoa. That's horrible.
So basically, the entire town was funded by tourism. Atlantic City still is like a place that people go to for... It's like Vegas, right? They go to like gamble and stuff. You consider that, then you realize the entire economy of the town was basically built off the back of their Black population. And then what makes it even weirder and grosser is that after the opening ceremonies at $1 Million Pier, the contestants were escorted to a float by Black residents in slaves costume, which were the only African or Black Americans to participate in Miss American festivities for the next half century.
Okay. That is not good.
Yeah. Great start.
Yeah.
We're off to a great start. Yeah, not great. The other thing that I think made it popular and got a lot of attention was the fact that at the time, men could. Women weren't allowed to bare their knees on the beach, so you couldn't have your knees showing. Contestants were required to wear bathing suits. And so it was this like weird thing where they ended up wearing them anyway. So they were like technically breaking the law. And at the end, 5 male judges pronounced Margaret Gorman the most beautiful girl in America at age 16.
Oh, no. So
and just over 5 feet tall. Which we also know because she was the smallest Miss America because they had to measure every single detail of them. Apparently, newspapers congratulated the 1926 pageant winner for her well-molded throat. Because she had a 12-inch throat. But, like, who cares? The size of your throat, like, is...
Can you imagine if... I have never personally been complimented on my throat.
So the size of her throat was well molded. It's weird. Like you hear now about bust, hip, and waist size, but that's for measurements of dresses and stuff. And I don't even know mine, but that was a more common measurement than the circumference of your throat. Something else that I thought was really important that she brought up is that this pageant took place 1 year after the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote.
I was going to say, like, the irony of that is crazy to me.
She literally said, is it any surprise that just as women won the right to vote, a repurposed form of pageantry emerged out of the deep blue to ensure that they were voted upon?
Oh,
and I thought that was a very good point, where it was like, oh, fine, you want to have democracy? Here you go. We're going to vote about which one of you is the prettiest, and we're going to pick a 16-year-old girl.
Oh, no.
So it's just, if you look at it and you go, wow, that was the beginning. It's a century-long pageant. I feel like it shows you
they had a lot to make up for if they wanted to make up for something.
Yeah. And when you consider that, okay, it's much better than it was.
Yeah.
But wow. The low bar.
Yeah. I don't know.
I got nothing. Really low bar.
Not great. Not great.
Yep. And it continued. They've had scandal all throughout the time. In the 20s, it was a really big deal. But people were like bending the rules. And so Miss Alaska won, but then she was disqualified because she was a New York resident and a married woman. And she was actually also a recent immigrant from Sweden. And she'd spent all of 3 days in Juneau, Alaska. But couldn't be... Poor Alaska. No one checked.
How long have you lived here? That's incredible.
And then in the 30s, they hired this lady named Lenora Slaughter, which I think she was brought up a lot in the documentary. They viewed her as the savior of the pageant for a while. I think she's one of the worst things that have happened.
Yeah, you can watch and come up with your own opinion, but...
Yeah, her whole thing was that she wanted to attract a better class of girl, and therefore they would get better sponsors, was the whole thing behind it. And so they added the talent competition, instituted scholarships, created the coronation ceremony, and started pageant momming the pageant, which is great. And then they started instituting all these rules that are still in place today. Hopefully some of them are gone now that they've gone through another couple of reforms. At that time, the Miss America had to leave right after she got crowned, and then the chaperone would drive her straight to her hotel room. Like, she wasn't allowed to see anyone because they were like worried about post celebration with them.
To this day, or I guess up to a certain point to this day, I don't know. Like I said, the documentary talked about how the pageant, like, they had a set of rules, and there was one girl who, like, we saw you, like, going to your boyfriend's and spending the night there. Someone saw you, and she got in trouble for that as a Miss America title holder.
There was one that was nuts where it's like he just brought her, like, Taco Bell or something and, like, dropped it off. Yeah. At her, like, apartment. And then she got, like, in trouble for that.
Because she shouldn't be doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, to have any contact with the opposite sex. You have to pretend that you don't have a boyfriend if you do, and you cannot be married. And yeah, so that was a thing that she did. They also had a society matron, is what they called them. And so it was basically like a chaperone 24 hours a day at that time. Pageant manager, like a campaign manager, I think, that kind of fulfilled that same duty, but sounds better than a
chaperone? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the other thing that she did, so you might be looking at it and you're like, wow, she created rules and scholarships and got better sponsors. How great. She also, though, instituted this rule that's called Rule 7.
Rule 7.
And it was this idea that all the contestants must be in good health and of the white race. And that basically meant to her it could be anyone except for Black women. So a lot of, like, newly arrived Europeans would use it as a way to enter into the country and be considered like a white American. Because if they could enter, then they could prove that they were, like, white. A lot of people from Sweden, Europe, other places that were immigrating at the time, this was a way for them to become, like, un-American. But at the same time, it really caused other issues of the white race is not
absolutely
a great thing. Especially when you're trying to represent an entire country. And I thought this was also interesting. It said that there was Miss New York at the time, Bess Meyerson. They wanted her to Anglicize, is that how you say it? I don't know, whatever, make her name wider. They wanted it to be Betty instead of Bess. Bess was too Jewish or something. And so she refused, however, and won the contest. And she was the first and only Jewish Miss America that they've ever had.
Crazy.
There's been protests about it. There was a other organization that founded Miss Black America. And it was basically they realized that Miss America wasn't going to desegregate. And so they started their own. And that was in the 60s that a lot of this happened. People did protest outside. They burned things. They made signs. And the press,
there was
of course,
a reference of the burn the bras maybe came from a Miss America protest. There was a reference to that in the documentary, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. And the press was just rude about it. They basically just said it's all of the people that aren't pretty enough to be in the pageant that are protesting it. Yeah.
Horrible.
As they usually
do. Yeah.
Something that's cool is that at the end of last year, Black women held the crowns of 5 major beauty pageants: Miss America, Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, Miss Universe, and Miss World. It show that it went far, but I'm not that impressed.
Yeah.
1970s, they finally had their first Black contestant, Cheryl Brown. 13 years later, Vanessa Williams of New York became the pageant's first Black winner. I'm probably going to save what happened to her for when we talk about the episodes a little bit later. But they exploited her, and some of the stuff came out from her past from some modeling she had done when she was younger, and so they forced her to step down. And then they didn't elect another Black Miss America for her.
That was so disgusting, learning that whole story about...
Yeah. Do you want to just talk about it right now, actually?
Yeah, I would love to, because essentially what happened is she finally got... Yeah, they finally had a Black Miss America. And what happened was that years ago, she had taken nude photographs years previously. And
it was like a teenager, I think, when they were taken. Yeah.
And to be clear, like, she was told, one, that it would, like, the pictures would only be used to show her silhouette. That's what she had consented to, one. And then two is that they wouldn't be, like, used in print. She didn't like sign off these pictures being available and on display.
I think it was basically like a personal artist kind of project, and she had been modeling at the time, so it was like for a photography friend, and it was with another woman. I will say that too, like,
which added to the scandal, of course.
Yeah.
But again, very disgusting in the sense of what she had consented to with the photos is not obviously what got upheld in the end, because I'm sure that person or someone got paid a lot of money for those pictures to come to light.
Penthouse, the like magazine, the equivalent to Playboy. They published the photos of her.
It reminded me of Marilyn Monroe, honestly, of that story of Hugh Hefner buying those photos of something that she had done years before because she needed money and didn't consent to having those pictures in the magazine. And it's just really gross how it's, oh no, like they own the photographs, so they decide. And it's, yeah, but it's my body and I didn't consent to them being shown this way. Very disgusting.
Well, and it's just dumb that it was even an issue, because I'm like...
True, yes.
And art and photography has been a thing for literal centuries.
No, very true.
So it was dumb that it was even a thing, but it's even more disgusting on the fact she had no say over it. And then they basically were like, you have to step down because it'll ruin...
it
the
hit
Miss American name.
A lot of controversy, and she was basically faced with no choice then but to resign from her title as a way to save face as much as possible. The Miss America organization didn't really work or try to help her to like give it covered up, and that was something that I thought was an interesting point, is that they were like, how many other times do maybe things like this happen to like politicians, at least for one, and organizations are able to cover it up then, but then when it was a Black woman and the first Black woman to win, they weren't really willing to do that. They put it all on her when she didn't do anything wrong in the first place. I want that to be very clear. That's my I believe that.
Put it wrong. We are admitting that she did not do anything wrong.
She did not do anything wrong.
No.
But so anyway, she had to, she stepped down from her title, and it was a huge scandal. And then what I thought was really interesting is that the next year, the woman who won was like a typical like blonde. She was actually Miss Utah, and they noted that she was a Mormon.
I know,
which I thought was very funny.
Well, because they're like, she won't have any scandal, basically.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Is they were like, oh, we're gonna pick someone that we know is very like religious and that follows the certain codes. And then they talked about how it's like the years following, it seemed like each like state organization would send their safest option.
Definitely, they were like, white equals safe, And I think the organization as a whole went, oh, we finally elect a Black Miss America and this is what happened. Serves us right. Like, we should never do it again.
Yeah, which is so disgusting, of course. Yeah, there was so much about that, like, really disturbed me, obviously.
I agree.
It was really sad how they were not willing to stand behind their pick.
Yeah. And it's also annoying, too, because you think, okay, yes, Penthouse had a lot of money in the 70s. I'm sure Miss America had a lot of money in the 70s. That was the peak of pageantry. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, weren't they sponsored by Pepsi for a while?
Yeah, this was a big deal.
I'm sure they could have approached the magazine and been like, hey, we'll pay you double or whatever. And
it definitely seems like they weren't willing to stand behind Miss, like they weren't willing to be there. They weren't willing to be there for her. And it's really quite a tragedy what happened. And learning about that story was very heartbreaking. There have since been Black Miss Americas, but there was, a lot of the previous winners really talked about that and also talked about how they definitely, of course they are Black women, but they felt like they had to conform to like Eurocentric beauty standards still as much as possible, like colored contacts and straightening their hair.
Yeah.
And just like, because that's what the beauty pageant would accept as what actual beauty was.
And even this is like a huge thing. They would choose the Black women with the lightest skin tone.
So, and that was the first one.
Yeah. So they would constantly try to choose the whitest Black woman to send or to pick.
To represent them.
Or to represent so that it would be like safer and more palatable. And that's just stupid. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that was a very obviously horrible history inside of that. And there was a whole episode that talked about the racism involved in the Miss America pageant.
The other thing that happened, like the next big thing, was in 2017, what came out about the other person who was considered the savior of Miss America the second time around. I don't know when he entered, but his name was Sam Haskell, and he was the longtime CEO. And I don't know. He apologized later to Vanessa Williams for how they handled it. But I don't.
Too late.
Yeah, but I don't know if he was actually there when that happened because that was 1970, and so probably not. But on behalf of the organization, he was horrible too. Oh my gosh, so bad.
Yeah.
And he pretended to be so good. And in 2017, he was basically forced to resign because of the things he had done that they talked about in the first episode. He would email these derogatory things about the women behind their backs, like talking about their bodies. And
it was so gross.
He would ruin their careers, tell people, oh, she sleeps around and we had to get her all these shots for everyone that she was sleeping with and lying.
Such weirdo behavior. Yes.
And so it's just super bad. I'm like, is there anything else we want to talk about with him? He was just a horrible guy.
Yeah, I think too, he also... there was a lot of women that specifically were like, what's the word? Abused? Yeah. By them.
Not sexually or physically, but in every other way imaginable. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was also interesting is like the one man that they had that they kept interviewing was someone who had worked for him. And like he had dated a previous Miss America, but like he basically forced them to break. It was just really weird behavior.
Yeah.
And
he like had it out for that Miss America. She's in the whole thing. He ruined her career, then he ruined her business later.
And it's for seemingly no reason.
No, like, I don't think he had one. He just didn't like her. She came from a middle-class American family. And so he was like,
and he didn't like
poor.
Her. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and it almost, the amount of brutalization she had from it almost drove her to suicide. It was like, it was really bad. So he was a horrible person. He ended up quitting because he made him break up with her and everything was getting bad. And then he released the emails. And when all of the emails became public, they originally said that he was going to take a break. And then all of the Miss Americas found...
America's got really mad, which rightfully
they created like this big open letter that was just like, this is not what the organization stands for. Get rid of him now. And so they did. And
they kind of had a whole coup.
Yeah. Like all the previous Miss Americas, they're like, no.
And then they all voted in the new one.
Yeah.
Like it made me kind of laugh, to be honest.
And the new one, I feel bad for her because I like a lot of the press and stuff, and even this article that I mentioned were like really judgmental. And I'm like, it was an impossible situation for her to be in.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really know how you would come back from that one.
No, it was Gretchen Carlson. She had been Miss America in 1989. So she was a former Miss America. And she was also notably one of the Fox News hosts who had left the network during the Me Too movement after she had a $20 million settlement from sexual harassment lawsuit against Roger Alley. And I think, isn't her story one of the ones featured in that Bombshell show?
Ooh, I think
so.
I love that movie.
I know, it's so good.
Yeah, Nicole Kidman plays her.
Yes. So she was like one of the faces of that Me Too credibility, like everything that was happening at that time. And they were like, perfect, like previous Miss America, part of this Me Too movement. Obviously, she'll help get it back on track. And she brought back in the guy who released all the emails and then a whole female executive team. That guy wasn't an executive, by the way. He was just an employee. And her idea was to make the organization 100% about empowering women and like to professionalize the pageant, make it like more equitable after like Me Too, less sexist and everything.
Took away the swimsuit portion when she got in charge.
I thought it was neat. The article says her tenure seemed to be less about empowering women than remaking her career. I don't know if that was really what she was attempting to do. Like maybe there's something that the documentary missed where that was like a thing, but
I think that maybe is a critique of the documentary because I struggled to understand what she did that was so bad. I don't feel like they explained that very well.
Yeah.
They were talking about how she did it, but then she failed, and then she did this. And I was like, wait, maybe I'm misunderstanding something, and maybe I honestly just need to go rewatch it. But I was like, I actually don't really see. I see that she caused a lot of controversy.
They got really mad about the swimsuit competition. And then something else that happened is, so obviously right after the Miss America had gotten crowned, all of this went down. And then she came in like halfway through the reign of a Miss America. And they were basically trying to reform the entire thing during Cara Munn's reign as Miss America.
Yeah.
And so she wrote this open letter at the end saying that there was like bullying and she was being silenced and marginalized and treated like a wind-up toy. And they mentioned that in the documentary and brought up the fact that it was just a hard time to be Miss America because they were trying so hard to figure out what the organization was going to be that they couldn't really have her go and do all of the regular Miss America things.
Yeah, it's a sad time, I'm sure, to be.
Yeah. So I was like, I feel like it's healthy criticism to be like, they didn't utilize me, but at the same time, I don't think they knew what to do. Basically, the entire organization had fallen down. They had to rebuild it. And then they had this Miss America standing there and they're like, sorry, you were elected by the other people.
Yeah. There was also an aspect of it, too, where it was like, it seemed like she almost denounced everything that it used to be. And so all the previous title holders were like, okay, so she's like, should we be ashamed that we were a part of it beforehand, though?
Yeah.
Maybe she didn't walk the line of honoring what came before as much as she should have. I don't know. Again, maybe I missed something, but I'm a little, I think they could have maybe made that argument a little bit better as to what she did that was so bad.
I thought it was really interesting. They had this like back and forth with a bunch of the Miss Americas talking about the swimsuit elimination. And some of them were like, that was the most empowered I ever felt. Like, why would we get rid of that? Maybe we should just let any body be in it. But then
maybe anyone can wear a swimsuit.
But then other people were talking about the fact that contestants would not eat anything up until the swimsuit pageant was over, and they would bronze and wax everything and were so focused on making sure that they could walk in heels in a swimsuit on stage and feel okay about it, and just the aspect that it had. And I felt like I was going back and forth because I was like, yeah, anyone can wear a swimsuit, and I was like, yeah, I could see where that could be empowering, and I was like, but yeah, the patriarchy and the male gaze and all this stuff.
But like, where did it come from?
But then it got to the end and there was that one woman. I wish I had written down her name. She was amazing. Everything she said, I was like, yes, it was one of the previous Miss Americas. And she basically said that she realized that if they eliminated the swimsuit portion, less girls would die. And that was the end of it for her.
Yeah.
Because she was like, if getting rid of this and idealizing these body types and showing that on screen even saves one life, it's worth eliminating it. And that hit me. And then I was like, if you're saving lives, it doesn't matter if you like feel sexy and empowered in your swimsuit. Like if people are dying because of the way you look, then it's not worth having it.
And that was like another main focal point. The documentary was like the fact that the mental health of these women just so severely suffered because of, one, how the Miss America organization would treat them and use them afterwards, and then also what they felt like they had to do in order to gain these titles, as opposed to relating to how they treated their bodies.
Yes.
Or
and how kept the title too. They had to it was full hair and makeup constantly for every appearance, and they didn't have a beauty team.
Yeah, like a lot of it was on them. Or, oh, a close friend of yours died. Part of being Miss America is showing up even when you're having a hard time and you need to fulfill the sponsorship. So the show must go on, as opposed to
get on stage and smile.
Basic empathy. Yeah, exactly.
They were alienated from their entire family. They weren't allowed to see anyone. They're basically on tour by themselves. Like, they don't have any friends. They don't have anyone with them. They have the board of directors and their pageant manager that's basically watching them at every move to make sure they don't talk to a guy.
Yeah,
they couldn't do anything.
The freakiest part of the documentary is when one woman talked about her experience of, she was called into the office and he said, "Do you see this contract?" And she said, "Yeah." And he's like, "You signed it. That means I own you.
Yeah.
That means you have to do whatever I say while you're the title holder." And that was because she had been the youngest title holder ever. She won when she was 17, and her parents had written a letter expressing concern over certain things that they were being asked to pay for that they didn't approve of, that they weren't asked if they would pay for it, and different things that she was having to do they didn't feel was good. And so they wrote a letter to him, and that was his response to it.
Yeah, he's tough.
I own you.
Yeah.
Which, that verbiage is evil.
Oh, yeah. No, he was really bad. And and all of it's, of course, happening behind the scenes. One of the other things I remember now is they talked about how when they did eventually get another Black woman to win, they didn't know how to deal with her hair needs.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't let her do any of the regular maintenance you have to do on your hair. You have to go and do heat protective hairstyles, and those take way longer than a regular blowout would. They didn't want to pay for it, and they didn't want to plug in the time for it. And so she ended up having to chop off all of her hair and then wear these horrible wigs for the rest of the time in order to save her hair, because she couldn't straighten it for every appearance because it was killing her hair, but they wouldn't let her do anything else. They weren't taking care of the people that they put into the positions, and then also just the way to get into it was causing eating disorders and depression and mental health crises over and over again.
It's truly, it's devastating. It was really sad. That was the final episode of it, was really diving into the unfortunate kind of dark side there. And they also brought up a couple years ago, a former Miss USA title holder, unfortunately did pass away. Trigger warning, of course. It was really sad. But then a lot of the Miss Americas, they all talked about how much they actually really, unfortunately, resonated, with what she had been going through. And after you focus so hard on upholding an ideal of not disappointing anyone, and then there's no help for you once you're out of your title. Yeah. That you're just left.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They don't have a support system or anything. I think all of the previous Miss Americas meet up once a year. But there's no, let's help you de-acclimate.
Well, and that's the crazy thing. It's for a year, they completely control your life. And then afterwards, you're just, bye.
No, see you later.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, they do get paid because it is a full-time job. But it's in the low six figures, which when you consider all the expenses that they're racking up for dresses, hair, and makeup and everything else, it's not enough. And then also, this is the requirements: energy, positivity, professionalism, and courtesy while engaging in extensive travel, often logging 20,000 miles a month and at times changing location every 8 to 24 hours.
And just so many rules on how they're supposed to conduct themselves.
Oh, another thing, too, they're not trained when they take over the position either. There's no one there guiding them. They're just basically told, okay, stand there, say this, do this, smile. Yeah, there's no help in any way.
And also, too, it's not like they're able to then be a lot of them, too, are very passionate about the causes that they believe in. And then when they actually get the title holder, it's don't say anything
you can't
crazy,
do anything. Yeah. Or even they bring up the fact that a lot of them do it for scholarship money, but then the fact that they can't go to school after they win. You've got a full-time job for a year. And so you have to take off time in order to carry it out. So that's a year-long sabbatical at least. And they said a lot of them don't end up going back. And then the 7 finalists of the pageant receive $8,500 apiece, but that only pays for a third of a semester at some
$8,500.
Yeah.
Oh
so
my
it's
gosh.
like, that really doesn't do anything. That's a third of a semester at some colleges. That's not helpful. So it's if the point of it's for scholarships, like you're not sending people back to school. You're not helping people actually pay for school. Like they're not able to actually support the causes once they get the crown. Like it's, what is the point of it then? What are they actually doing it for? And I think maybe that's the question. What is the point of Miss America anymore?
I mean, I'm sure, of course, it's done good things.
Yes.
Of course it has.
Yeah.
But the documentary didn't paint it in the best light, I will say.
They did bring up that the most recent one, they had a more diverse cast. One of them had a pixie cut. Can you believe it? The scandal.
Yes, the scandal.
Others had bare midriffs during their evening wear, which apparently wasn't a thing before, which I'm like, okay.
Also scandalous. Yeah.
And then a lot of them would use different ways of announcing themselves. Miss Michigan said, from the state with 84% of the United States fresh water, but none of its residents to drink, I'm Miss Michigan, Emily Sayoma, taking more of a stance.
Ooh, yeah.
But they're still looking for passion, talent, ambition. And apparently a pharmacy student won, and her talent portion was just like giving a TED talk on stage and like demonstrating hydrogen peroxide with exploding goo. So cooler.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I think they're like trying really hard, but it's just one of those things where do we need this?
Yeah, that was like, I think you brought this up. Miss America's, I think the one.
Yes,
I know
the same one. I know, she was amazing. I should have looked up who she was.
She was amazing. And yeah, at the very end, she was like, I get that we're trying to make this better, but do we need a Miss America? Do we need to pick one person to be the ideal woman, for America?
And she just does the status symbol for women in America need to be someone wearing a crown. Are we really at that point still where we need that? Is that essential? Or should we? I don't even think people really use Miss America as a role model for children anymore.
I was going to say, though, I don't know if it is relevant pop culturally anymore.
No.
It once was, of course, but I don't think it is even.
Pay attention. I never watched it. I don't know anyone who does. I know people who participate in the state and county one. Yeah. But yeah, so it's just one of those things. I don't know. Maybe it's just not necessary anymore. Yeah, and the article did say progressivism has limits in a regressive institution. And I think that's a good point, too. It's maybe the organization just...
If the organization... We talked about what it was founded on, but then also, like, at its root, it is who's the prettiest woman.
Yeah.
And I guess, is it anti-feminist to have a beauty contest? I don't know.
I don't know either.
If that's inherent, but if we're measuring people's hips... and measuring their throats and, measuring every aspect of their body.
I don't think they do it anymore. They still might. I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
Actually, that's true. I don't know.
And then she also brought up for every person who was good, like you think of that first lady who said, no, I will not sign the swimsuit contract like I'm an opera singer. You also have other people who, like Erica Harold, her whole platform was advocating for virginity until marriage, which... Is that really a platform that needs to be taken on by Miss America? You know what I mean? And just like, it's time or place. So it's one of those things where it's, no, does there really need to be one spokesperson for an entire country in that way? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah. One last thing that she brought up. In 1988, a college student named Michelle Anderson infiltrated the Miss California pageant as a contestant, undergoing months of bleaching, dieting, training, tanning, and feigning fundamentalist beliefs to get into the running. Seconds before the winner was to be announced, she reached into her cleavage and unfurled a silk banner that read, "Pageants hurt all women." Anderson went on to become a lawyer and is now the president of Brooklyn College. I think she was right. Miss America gets money for college. Everyone else gets lessons in sexism, racism, and capitalism that take a lifetime to unlearn, and there's no scholarship for that.
That is true. Oh my gosh. That story is... incredible.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where I think we can all agree that there's been a lot of problematic institutions over the years that have done good. But at the end of the day, if it's not really needed anymore, then does it still need to continue just because some people are attached to the idea of it?
Yeah, that's something that I think is an ongoing theme, is like tradition.
Yeah.
There is something to upholding ideals as to of hey, it's the 4th of July, people talk about America. Like, this is the foundational things of our country, and what aspects of those foundational things are good things.
Drive-in movie theaters, and they're all gone.
That's what I was talking about. Thank you, Stauney. No, but that's valid, though.
I know. I think you're talking about traditional American things. Like, you think of like American culture and stuff, and are we getting rid of the wrong stuff?
Yeah, but also too, I understand that it's scary to change things, and also too, a lot of times there are good ideals behind things that don't get actually done.
Yeah.
Think about what America was started on. Freedom for all people, except not these people.
I remember that still makes no sense to me. Freedom and liberty and justice for all. Except all of you.
Except, sure, on paper, I'm down. I'm for it. Yeah. And then if you look at how it was actually, carried out, it was not good. Point being, like, tradition and ideals, like, that can be a very scary thing to turn away from. But I also do think that you have to be able to look at something and say, but is that something I want to stand behind?
And I think it's important to realize too, like, we talk a lot of the times about how America doesn't have like culture, like the United States doesn't have any culture. And I think a lot of the times it's just because we focused so much on a nation as eradicating any form of culture that there was. Like, malls weren't making any money, tear down the malls.
It's all in the name of money. Capitalism and corporations, that's our culture. Everything. That's
and was I'm sure the Ogden Drive-In, that had been there my entire childhood. We would go every summer. I thought it was so fun. I still think they're an amazing idea. Apparently, they weren't allowed to stay open during COVID, even though everyone was in their own car.
Oh, yeah.
And movie theaters even managed to stay open, but they didn't have enough money.
Well, they were able to stay open because they are funded by big corporations and they were able to support themselves.
But the drive-in movie theaters are really small. They rely on independent local people running them. And so it got shut down. It didn't make it through. And now they're talking about tearing it down and turning it into an apartment complex.
That's relevant to like what's happening in Nashville. Is there's so many like local businesses and just places that have been here for years and years. And I guess I'm part of the problem because I'm moving into Nashville, but they're all getting torn down or they're getting bought out by developers and they're just building apartment complexes. But in reality, it's like they're taking away the soul of the city. And like gentrification, like there's so many things like that are happening and it's all in the name of making money. And it's like the people who have all the money that are coming in. And like I said, they're like taking the heart and the soul out of like these places.
It's like anything that we did have, they've completely gotten rid of to the point where we even talked about it in our Losing Color episode. Things just aren't, nothing has it anymore. And
because it's more economical for things to not, to not be beautiful, like, and to be colorful and unique. It's all about making these, it's like the tall and skinnies. Tall and skinny homes. So build up as many homes as you can as possible. And so they're very tall and they're skinny and ugly, to be honest.
No, they are.
But also at the same time, it's probably the only thing I'm going to be able to hope to potentially own anytime soon because they are not as expensive of all
they're building, though. I'm like, if you realize,
that's also all they're building.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not. It can't be that much more expensive to make things look better. It just really can't be.
But that's the sad thing is it's not prioritized because it could be done cheaper and it could be done more economical, and it's all about the profit margins. And maybe that makes me very sad.
Maybe that's the problem with Miss America too, is that it's too focused on the sponsorships and making money off of viewership to the point where they completely lost the plot line. And it didn't even end up being like supporting a woman in her future education and career, and instead it turned her into a puppet.
Like supporting the educations then of all the women that participated and participate. If it's supposed to be an empowering thing for women, okay, give those funds back to the women that participate. Then don't pocket it
exactly,
and make these women go on these these crazy corporate sponsorships,
especially when their whole thing is that they're so much different from Miss USA because they're not a beauty pageant. And then it's but if you're a scholarship pageant, like, where's the scholarships? So no, I think it's just an important thing to realize, and something I definitely see with our country is that I don't know if we're prioritizing the right things, if we're fighting for the right stuff, and if anyone's on the right page. Probably not.
It's a really exciting time to be in America.
Love it. Proud to be.
Happy 4th of July.
Oh,
Anyways,
wow.
On that light, happy note, I guess the episode's over.
That's it. And if any of our listeners in other countries want to take us when we have to flee,
oh gosh,
eventually.
Okay. Actually, something I'm interested in is if anyone out there does have experience in pageants. Like I said, I'm going to text my friend. I would love to know her thoughts on it. I should have done that before we recorded. I don't know why I did not think to text her. But anyways, I feel like we just learned about it for the first time, really, just in our research for this and via the documentary. So I would be so curious if anyone has any other thoughts. Is it good? Is it bad that they got rid of the swimsuit competition? And like all of these things, like I am so intrigued now of what do people think? Should there be a Miss America pageant? Is it just a dated bad thing? I don't know.
And I want to reiterate,
I
don't think either of us have anything against the county or state pageants at all. I feel like even the pageant didn't know
nothing against the women who are participating.
No,
in them,
and I think it's a great thing for the younger girls to get involved in their community and like all sorts of that stuff. I think it's just more of the overall organization, what they end up standing for, that hopefully none of that's bleeding down into all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just trying to keep everyone safe and mentally healthy.
All we're trying to do. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for those who have been leaving reviews. I feel like we've gotten a couple more reviews lately, and they're so kind.
We send them to each other and we smile. Sometimes my eyes get a little watery.
We cry.
But yes, thank you.
Nice.
It's so nice.
So yeah, thank you so much for being here and for listening. And we're here every Monday except for this week because I released a song and I did not have the ability to do everything.
No, I feel like I constantly have to remind people like we work full time and we have other things and we do this. So like sometimes stuff just isn't exactly on schedule because this isn't our full-time job.
Because life.
But yeah.
Yes. But thank you for being here and part of the venture. So eventually it could be a full-time thing.
And if you want to support us even more, you can like, follow, subscribe, rate, review, go buy our cute merch.
You can buy the cute merch.
And the little hat. Go buy it. You can wear it this year. And yeah, just all the other things. And we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time. And don't forget, I'm going to play Hysteria.
Oh, yes.
So we'll go out on the chorus.
Yes. Bye.
Insert now.